There are 12 phrases that sound harmless, but are actually clear signs of a man slowly pushing himself to the edge. Not because he's weak, but because he doesn't realize his own words are betraying his mind every single day. I'm fine. No, you're exhausted. Let it go. No, you're avoiding. I'll deal with it tomorrow. No, you're postponing your own life. If you've ever said any of these, you need to watch this video until the end. And if you know you're meant for more than a life like this, hit subscribe. We're going to break out of this vicious cycle, one phrase at a time. Phrase number 1. I don't care. People often say this to appear strong, detached, untouchable. But pause for a moment and ask yourself, do you truly not care? Or are you simply too tired to care anymore? I don't care sounds like a bold declaration of power, but more often, it is the voice of someone who has been disappointed too many times, someone who now chooses to shut down their heart so they won't have to feel anything further. You think you're in control. In truth, you've let go of the wheel. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You can choose not to have an opinion. No one can force you to judge. But if you abandon awareness, you allow yourself to become lost." When you decide that nothing matters, you strip yourself of the ability to discern what does matter. You no longer know when to act, when to pause, when to fight, or when to walk away. Indifference can be a temporary response, but repeated often enough, it becomes identity. At that point, it's no longer a phrase, it's a way of life. And a man who lives without caring has nothing left to fight for, to protect, or to love. You have the right to stay silent, to walk away, to choose not to react. But don't confuse calm with surrender. A true Stoic is not indifferent. They are discerning. They know exactly what is worth their full attention in deliberate action. So next time you feel the words "I don't care" rising to your lips, ask yourself, is this my reason speaking, or is this my pain hiding itself? If it's the latter, then maybe it's time to start caring again. Not because you're weak, but because you're still human. Phrase number 2, I don't need anyone. It sounds powerful, independent, resilient, but the truth is, this statement rarely comes from strength. It comes from pain, from someone who once needed someone, who once opened up, once hoped, and was let down. And instead of learning how to trust the right people, they choose to trust no one at all. I don't need anyone is not a declaration of confidence. It's often a vow made by a heart that has been rejected. It's like building a strong wall to protect yourself. But tragically, that wall becomes the prison of your own loneliness. Seneca once said, "A life without friendship is like life without sunlight." A Stoic is not someone who lives in isolation. They are someone who understands the value of the right connection. They don't rely on others to define their worth, but neither do they lie to themselves that they can walk the entire journey alone. Because the truth is, you can be strong alone, for a while. But to truly grow, you need a mirror. Someone who challenges you, someone who holds you accountable, someone who helps you refine your thoughts and actions, someone who helps you become who you truly are. I don't need anyone is a mask. And behind that mask, there's often someone deeply longing to be understood, but too used to being overlooked. This phrase is like refusing an extended hand, just because you're afraid it might hurt you again. Be honest with yourself. You don't need everyone, but you do need someone. Someone you trust. Someone who stays when you're silent. Someone deep enough not to fear your truth. The more you mature, the clearer it becomes. Strength is not needing no one. Strength is knowing exactly who is worth needing. And the courage to open your heart, selectively, wisely, is the truest form of inner strength. Phrase number 3, I just live like this to keep the peace. This is a phrase many people repeat when they are exhausted, too tired to explain, too worn out to confront, too disheartened to demand what is right. It sounds like a wise decision, a graceful retreat, but in reality, it's often the voice of helplessness wrapped in the disguise of calm. When you say, I just live like this to keep the peace, you are aware that something wrong is happening, but you choose to accept it in exchange for short-term quiet. You accept being mistreated. You compromise your values. You give in, Not because you agree, but because you fear what might happen if you resist. But what is the cost of that silence? Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "True peace comes from living in accordance with your nature, not from avoiding conflict." We were not born to be people who nod blindly. Every time you choose to keep the peace, you are turning your back on something that deserves to be spoken. You are abandoning yourself. And the tragedy is, you do it so quietly that no one notices, not even you. Don't confuse peace with surrender. A Stoic doesn't go around starting wars, but they also don't flee from what is right simply because it's hard. They understand there is no real peace if your inner world is a silent battlefield. If you keep repeating this phrase, "I just live like this to keep the peace," one day you will forget what used to hurt you, what used to ignite your will to change. You'll accept everything as it is, even when it wounds you. Pause, look within. The question is not whether there is peace or not. The real question is, does this life deserve your silence? Because life is not meant only to be quiet. Life is meant to be lived, rightfully. Phrase number 4, whatever. Whatever. It sounds easygoing, agreeable, even considerate. But if you listen closely, this phrase often comes from someone who has stopped expecting anything from life. Or worse, someone who no longer believes their voice deserves to be heard. Think about it. A person who truly cares about something doesn't say whatever. They have preferences, even small ones. They express life, presence, and engagement. But when someone has grown too used to being ignored, when their choices are repeatedly dismissed, whatever becomes a form of self-defense, a quiet retreat from playing the lead role in their own story. Marcus Aurelius once reminded us, "Do not ignore yourself, then blame the world for not noticing you." When you say whatever, you're silencing yourself. You're teaching others to think your needs are not important. You're sending a silent message. There's nothing left in me worth protecting, but deep inside you do care. You have feelings, values, opinions. You simply fear that no one will listen, so you stop speaking. Stoicism does not teach us to be silent out of despair. It teaches us to speak when it serves our integrity, and to be quiet when that silence is chosen from strength, not from surrender. Whatever is often a sign that you're gradually losing your boundaries. And once you lose those boundaries, you lose the sense of who you are, lost beneath a flood of choices made by others. Don't let whatever become your default response. Every time you say it, you're handing over a little piece of your life's direction to someone else. You're letting others draw your map without knowing if they even understand where you want to go. You don't have to be right all the time. You don't need to control everything, but you do have the right to choose, to express, to define happiness in your own terms. And you are worthy of that, not by shouting, but by saying clearly what you truly need. Whether it's a small decision at dinner or a deep value you refuse to compromise. Because someone who lives authentically never says whatever to their own life. Phrase number 5, just let it go. Just let it go. It sounds like a gentle act of release, a sign of someone who has transcended and is living above the noise. But in most cases, it's not serenity, it's escape. It's a kind of surrender, masked in the appearance of calm detachment. Have you noticed? People often say, just let it go, right after being hurt, insulted, or disrespected. They're not letting go because they no longer care. They're letting go because they don't know what else to do. They're tired, they're wounded, and deep down they fear that if they confront the issue, they might fall apart. Epictetus once said, "We are not disturbed by what happens to us, but by our thoughts about what happens." Stoicism doesn't teach you to ignore problems. It teaches you to distinguish between what's within your control, so you can act, and what's beyond your reach, so you can release it. But in daily life, just let it go often becomes a dangerous confusion between those two. You're not releasing with clarity, you're giving up in defeat, and then soothing yourself with an empty phrase. A toxic relationship? Just let it go. A job that's draining your soul? Just let it go. A cruel comment that keeps you up at night? Just let it go. But have you truly let it go? Or are you just swallowing everything in silence, slowly forgetting who you are? Letting go in Stoic philosophy is an active act. It's a conscious decision, not an emotional reflex. It comes from sober reasoning, not from unhealed pain. When you say, just let it go, ask yourself, am I releasing this because it truly doesn't deserve my attention? Or because I don't have the strength to face it? True strength lies in this, that you dare to look directly at what hurts, respond in a way that aligns with your values, and then, and only then, release the rest. That's not indifference, that's a quiet kind of courage. Just let it go isn't wrong, but it should only be spoken when you truly understand what's happening and have chosen from clarity to no longer let it own your peace. If not, then every time you say, just let it go, it's another time your emotions are steering the ship, while you still believe you're being rational. And in that case, you're not living freely. You're just gently rocking yourself to sleep with a phrase that only sounds peaceful. Phrase number 6, real men don't talk about feelings. This sentence sounds like a medal many men wear on their chest, with a silent pride that says, silence is strength, numbness is toughness, and suffering without complaint is the ultimate form of masculinity. But think carefully. Is a man who doesn't talk about his feelings truly in control of them, or is he being controlled by them? Marcus Aurelius, one of the strongest emperors in history, who commanded armies on the battlefield and carried the fate of Rome on his shoulders, wrote in his journal every night about his emotions. He didn't run from fear, anger, or loneliness. He faced them. He named them. He studied their nature. And from that understanding, he refused to let them dictate his actions. Silence is not a sign of strength if it comes from fear. Fear of being judged. Fear of being seen as weak. Fear of no longer being man enough in the eyes of others. And ironically, the emotions we are too afraid to name are often the ones secretly running our lives. They drive us to lash out, hurt those we love, drown ourselves in alcohol, in work, or even in hollow relationships just to cover up the emptiness inside. Stoicism doesn't tell you to expose your emotions recklessly. It tells you to understand them, to face them with awareness, to not let them take the wheel, and also not to bury them under the rug of apathy. A real man is not one who is always strong. He is one who dares to step into the storm inside himself without running, without whining, and from there responds to the world with steady reason. You don't have to pour everything out to the world, but you do need a space, a moment, to have an honest dialogue with yourself. A place where you can say, I'm hurting, I'm angry, or I'm scared. Not to be weak, but to no longer be a prisoner of your own silence. Real men don't avoid emotions. They master them, with understanding, not with silence. Phrase number 7, I'm fine. Perhaps this is the most common lie in the world. Short, safe, no one asks further, and you still get to keep the tough mask you've spent years building. But you know what? Saying I'm fine isn't always calm acceptance. Sometimes it's an encrypted cry for help. It's how we keep others from stepping into our darkness, because we ourselves are afraid to stay there too. Epictetus once said, we are not hurt by what happens, but by how we perceive and respond to it. Saying I'm fine when you're not is a way of denying your true emotions. And when you deny them long enough, you lose touch with what's really going on inside. You go through day after day with that mask until even you believe you're fine. But the body doesn't lie. It's tired. It's drained. It starts snapping over little things, struggling to sleep, losing focus, pushing away those who care about you. And in the end, you feel nothing, just emptiness. Stoicism doesn't teach us to complain. It teaches us to be honest, first and foremost with ourselves. If you're not brave enough to face your inner reality, how can you steer the ship of your life? Saying I'm not okay doesn't make you weak, it makes you brave, because you've chosen to confront instead of avoid. You've chosen growth over living behind an invisible wall. So next time, when you're about to say, I'm fine, pause for a second and ask yourself honestly, am I really? Because sometimes the simplest words mark the line between someone who is truly living and someone who's merely getting by. Phrase number 8, I'll deal with it tomorrow. It sounds harmless, a familiar phrase, a little relaxation for today, a little postponement for the future. But every time you say, I'll deal with it tomorrow, You're quietly sending a message. I'm not important enough to do this right now. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "How much longer will you wait? Do what you were born to do." Stoicism doesn't oppose rest, but it holds procrastination in contempt. Not because it's lazy, but because it is the softest way of denying responsibility. The truth is, tomorrow never comes the way you expect. What you don't do today won't magically become easier tomorrow. On the contrary, it will pile up into shame, into anxiety, into a version of yourself that you can no longer respect. You can postpone your goals, but you cannot postpone the consequences. Discipline does not come from inspiration. It comes from habit, from waking up early when no one tells you to, from sending that email even when no one is reminding you, from practicing, learning, beginning, even if it's just for 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to not be put off until tomorrow. Because if you don't act today, you are quietly choosing a future that looks exactly like your past. And life doesn't stay the same because it's too hard to change. It stays the same because you're always waiting for tomorrow to begin. Phrase number 9, it's too late for me to change. This sentence may sound reasonable, but it's one of the most harmful lies you've ever told yourself. It doesn't come from truth. It comes from exhaustion, from the discomfort of starting over, from the fear that, what if I try to change and still fail? Marcus Aurelius began writing Meditations when he was nearly 50 years old, while leading an empire in the midst of crisis. Seneca was exiled, then summoned back to become the emperor's advisor. Epictetus was once a slave. None of them were born into ease, but they changed when life pushed them against the wall, and they still stepped forward. People don't change because they're young. They change when they're fed up with their own reflection, when they look in the mirror and can no longer bear to live one more day in cowardice, mediocrity, or procrastination. Age is not the limitation. It is the belief, it's too late for me, that shackles you. Every day you're still breathing is a new day handed back to you with the right to choose again. A 60-year-old who begins exercising will be healthier than a 30-year-old who does nothing. A 45-year-old who begins writing can still leave something meaningful behind, more than a 25-year-old who spends their days complaining but never acts. You're not too late. You just need to begin. And if you still have one more day to breathe, you still have one more chance to live differently. Phrase number 10, I don't have time. This may seem like one of the most harmless things to say, but in reality, it's a curtain that hides a painful truth. You don't prioritize yourself. You're not short on time. You're short on commitment. Because if something truly matters to you, you'll find a way. If it doesn't, you'll find an excuse. Marcus Aurelius was a Roman emperor. He commanded armies, managed legal systems, and handled crises, from wars to plagues. He wrote Meditations during brief breaks between battles, or late at night after completing imperial duties. No one gave him spare time to reflect on philosophy. He carved it out himself. And what about us? We scroll social media for 2 hours a day. We complain for another hour. We fumble through procrastination and the tasks others shove into our schedule. Then we conclude, I don't have time. But you do. You're just giving it away unconsciously. Epictetus said, don't say you're busy. Be honest and say you're prioritizing things of lesser value over things that matter. If what you need to do is rewrite your life, learn to manage your emotions, or read a book that awakens your mind, make it a priority. You don't need 2 hours. You need 20 minutes of true presence. Time doesn't come to you. You have to take it back. And if you don't do that today, then you're silently choosing a life in which you'll never have enough time. Phrase number 11. That's just life. This phrase may sound mature, as if you've come to understand the nature of life. But in truth, it is one of the most subtle masks of surrender. When someone says, that's just life, it's often not because they've gained deep insight, but because they once had hope, once tried, and were disappointed. So they chose a simple belief just to avoid getting hurt again. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, each day life will bring us what it will, but how we respond is up to us. This philosophy does not teach you to accept everything unconditionally. It teaches you to distinguish between what lies within your control and what does not. But even with what you cannot control, you still have the right to choose your attitude, to choose your dignity. When you keep repeating, "That's just life," you're closing the door to change. You're telling yourself that there's nothing more to be done. But the truth is, there still is. There's still a small action you can take each day, a new decision that can pull you out of the same old loop, a moment of clarity that can rescue you from the bitterness of fate. Stoicism does not teach you to deny reality, but it also does not teach you to bow before it. It teaches you to stand tall, even in heavy winds. And if you must say, "That's just life," then follow it with this: "But I will keep moving forward." Because human beings were not born to give up. We were born to overcome. Phrase number 12. I was just born this way. This is not just a statement, it is a sentence suspended over your entire life. When you say, "I was just born this way," you're not merely describing who you are freezing your capacity for change. You are writing the ending in the very first chapter. Let's face the truth. None of us were born with a fixed personality. You weren't born shy, hot-tempered, or weak. You were born with tendencies. The rest came from circumstances, reactions, and repeated choices made every single day. These are what formed who you are today. And if they were built layer by layer, they can also be dismantled, one piece at a time. Epictetus once said, "No one is a slave unless they choose to be." What you call your nature is often just a reluctance to change, dressed up as a philosophy. It's an excuse not to try. But don't be mistaken, you're not weak. You just haven't trained your strength. You're not cold. You've simply been hurt. You're not stubborn. You just haven't learned how to open up. You were born with potential. Who you become, how you live, that's the story you write every day. Don't let your past become your destiny. Don't let a single sentence erase what you could still become. Because no one is born a finished version of themselves, but everyone has the right to choose how they grow. The phrases we think are harmless are often just the masks we wear to survive. But surviving is not the same as living. A man who truly lives is one who dares to take off each mask, no matter how much it hurts. Who dares to face the truth, even when it's raw. Who dares to step out of his comfort zone, even when the road ahead is full of storms. If there's a moment in this video that made you pause, go silent, or suddenly see yourself, that's not a coincidence. That's a calling. Subscribe to the channel. Here, we don't just learn how to speak right, we learn how to live right. No more "I'm fine, let it go," or "That's just how I am." Just one phrase remains: I'm ready to change.